Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are two retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. And tonight, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk everything about, bless you, Ed. We're going to talk everything about the autopsy of these 4 young college students that were slain just a little bit over a week ago on the 13th of November. But before we get into it, I just want to just check in with Ed. How you doing, Ed? Welcome back home. How's things going? Everything good?
Doing good. Just a little tired.
Yeah, you've been traveling a lot, brother. You're working yourself to the bone, so it's all good. But we got the holidays coming up, and we have Barbara Butcher with us tonight. So we are going to talk, and again, I like it. I like to keep it to everything related to the autopsy findings, what possibly could have been found. There's no release. There's a cause and manner of death, but that's it. They're tight-lipped about it. They don't have a suspect or subject or anybody in custody, and this is an active and ongoing investigation. So. Again, our thoughts and prayers go out to these 4 families. They're going through a really difficult time right now. And, we want answers. We want somebody brought to justice and just can only imagine what the community is going through down there. But before we jump into it, Ed, I want to say thank you to the Patreon supporters, the channel members, and all the folks who positively engage. You guys are what makes it a great place. And Ed and I give thanks and praise to you. But not only do Ed and I thank you, all our guests, like Barbara Butcher, who's going to come on any minute with us. She thanks you because we been promoting her book that's coming out in 2023 in June. So the response and all of the great comments and people pre-ordering is greatly appreciated. Ed, before we get Barbara on, what's your thoughts on this case? I mean, there's a community that's up in very, very, very worried about a killer on the loose. Nobody feels safe in the community, and I watched a couple of interviews. I mean, what do you think on this thing? How much work do they have ahead of them? What's your thoughts, Ed?
Well, yeah, the community is rightfully anxious. There is a killer on the loose in their backyard. They don't know who it is. The crime scene investigation is still going on and expanding. More evidence is coming out of the house. They're expanding it to the backyard, to the wooded area behind the second story of the house, by the parking area, and they're back there looking to see if this guy or this person or persons discarded the weapons back there, or were maybe stalking and surveilling from back in the woods. These young ladies that were murdered. And so it is a scary time to be in that area.
Let's play this little clip that we talked about, Ed. This is a little old, but it talks about the autopsy. You have the coroner that comes on from Lathrop County. She comes on and gives a little statement, and let's just take a peek at this, and then we'll bring Barbara right on.
Find a suspect in the gruesome murder of 4 more questions as investigators race to find a suspect in the gruesome murder of 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho.
It's pretty traumatic when there's 4 dead college students who have been stabbed to death in one location.
The coroner saying today autopsies have been completed and the victims suffered extensive wounds after being stabbed multiple times with a large knife. Investigators now working to determine if the victims had defensive wounds or may have gotten the suspect's DNA on their bodies.
Well, looking to see if there are some clues that are on them. So some of the suspects' blood perhaps, or something under somebody's fingernails.
The coroner saying the autopsies have found the time of death sometime after 2 a.m.
All right, that was most pertinent and pertaining to what we're going to be talking about here. Ed, without further ado, let's bring on Barbara Butcher. She's a retired chief of staff from the New York City Medical Examiner's Office. She's always a contributor and always willing to come and give her thoughts on these cases. Barbara, thank you for taking out the time on a Tuesday evening.
Thank you, Ron. Always good to see you guys.
Yeah, and Ed and I are excited about the book. I know we just can't wait to get it in our hands.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. It's called What the Dead Know by Barbara Butcher. Available on Amazon through Ron's link.
Yes, I shared it on my community tab. It's on my website, and we'll show it at the end of this broadcast. But right now, I just want to, Ed, there's so many new subscribers. We're approaching 146,000 subscribers now, so we're growing. And I thank each and every one of you for subscribing. The super chats coming in when we're talking about these sensitive subjects. Sometimes we miss them. Emily Phillips says, this might sound odd, but I think it's scarier that there are no signs of sexual assault. Was this a killing just for fun? Question mark. Emily, that's a great question. We're going to get into it. Hold the questions towards the end of the show. Ed, could you do a brief intro for Barbara so everybody knows what her experience is? Because you do it well.
Okay. Well, Barbara was one of the first classes of medical legal death investigators to enter the New York City Office of Chief Medical Examiner. Prior to that, they had contracted physicians of various disciplines come out to the crime scenes. And then when they went to the medical legal death investigation system, they hired physician's assistants, which Barbara is, and they became the death investigators that were permanently employees of the New York City Office of Chief Medical Examiner, and would come out to the crime scenes or the death scenes, because remember, some of these scenes were natural in cause and crime scene didn't respond to those. And they would do their death investigations for the pathologists. And then after several years in the medical examiner as a death investigator under Dr. Charles Hirsch, Barbara became the chief of staff for the medical examiner's office. And then later on, after I retired from the New York City Police Department in 2008, Barbara brought me on to assist her with the forensic science training program, where I became the director of that program, answering to Barbara and Dr. Hirsch.
So are you telling this audience that Barbara was your boss?
She was my boss.
Wow.
More like colleagues. We were partners in running that school, and it was terrific. It was the best death investigation academy in the country.
Absolutely.
Anyway, thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Barbara.
Barbara, nobody does it better than Ed. Go ahead, Ed.
No, she's got thousands of death investigations under her belt.
Yeah, I screwed that up every time I say it, and Barbara always corrects me. So I like to jack up her death investigations. But being that as it may, we have 4 college students, 2 and their 2 20-year-olds, a couple, and then 2 21-year-old young, great students, great community people, just brutally slain. Barbara, just want to get your thoughts before we go into this on this case.
Absolutely horrific. Young kids just starting out, nice kids by all accounts, good students. And the sheer brutality of this, to go in and stab 4 people while they're in bed, while they're sleeping. Apparently they were each stabbed multiple times in the chest, and it's reported that at least one of them had defense wounds. Defense wounds meaning they had cuts on their hands and fingers from trying to ward off or grab a knife. Absolutely brutal and horrific.
Yeah. Ed, I'll let you take over with the questioning with Barbara, because we want her, Barbara, if you don't mind, we want you to kind of walk through what an overview of what the medical examiner, the actual forensic pathologist, what goes into these types of exams when you have multiple stab wounds and multiple victims. So I'm going to let Ed take over the questioning, because you were his boss, and if he gets out of line, you can straighten him out.
Oh gosh. All right. Listen. So I'll just leave that alone for now. But so with the death scenes investigations, you and I have been on many stabbing homicides, and we've seen all manner of geometry to these stab wounds. And and the geometry can tell us a lot about the weapon that was used. So maybe you could speak a little bit about, how the various geometry of the sharp force injuries can assist us in identifying the type of knife that may be used.
Sure. Ed, let's start first with the scene. As you said, you and I did plenty of stab wound homicides at the scenes. And I can think of a few occasions where you pointed out to me that there were blood drips leading away from the body. That's so important. First of all, those blood drips are often, as the person carries the knife out, you'll see blood drops on the floor. But occasionally, the perpetrator themselves will be cut by their own knife, especially if it's the kind of knife that has no guard or hilt, and their hand can slide down on it as they stab and strike bone. The knife will slide and cut them. That could be perpetrator DNA that we could pick up. So that's number one at the scene. For the autopsy, when examining stab wounds, the skin has a tensile strength. It stretches and contracts, and there are little muscles in the skin that keep it together. When there's a knife cut, let's see if I can do this. It pierces the skin, but it also releases all those little muscles. So now you have a gaping wound. It pops open. And you can't tell the size of the knife or the shape of the knife by looking at that gaping wound. So what they do is first they check the depth of the wound. Now, if you stab someone lightly, you might not get the full hilt of the knife. If you stab them very hard, you might go for the full length of the knife and then more. The body is, elastic, it's soft. So what we do to get the shape of the knife is reapproximate the skin edges. If you've got a wound like that, you bring them back together. You can either tape them, sew them, or just hold them, have your assistant hold them there. And now you can see the length of the wound and the thickness. Some knives are very thin, like stilettos. They leave, a minimal cut, but can go quite deep. Other knives are quite broad, and you'll see that they might have a double-edged. So a double-edged knife will leave on either side of the wound, they'll leave an incision. There you go. Thank you.
Double-edged knife.
Right.
All right.
So cut on both sides.
And serrated. And it has the hilt or the guard to stop your hand from going forward should the blade impact a bone and then stop abruptly, right? And then your hand would slide forward, which would happen with, say, this knife. Okay, yep. So if I had my hand like this and I stuck somebody and it hit bone, that blade is going to stop and my hand is going to go forward. And it's going to be sliced open by this blade, potentially. The same thing.
Ed, when you show the knives, can you just keep it up a little bit higher because it's at the bottom of the screen? So let me just put you full screen so everybody can see this. Okay, great.
That's a double-edged blade. So that's going to leave a little different geometry. Barbara, let's talk about the two, before we go on, let's talk about the two types of sharp edge injuries. The stabbing versus the incised. Yeah.
Stabbing versus cutting. So stabbing is straight in and gives us a better picture of the size of the knife once we pull the skin back together. Mm-hmm. It also will tell us if it's a single edge. Do you have a single edge knife there, Ed?
I sure do.
Okay. So as you can imagine, a single edged knife, one side of the wound is sharp and the other side is more blunt.
See, this flat surface is the blunt side.
Yeah.
And this side is the sharp side.
All right. And if you could hold up again the double-edged knife for a moment next to that one. Now, notice the two different hilts. Come down a little bit. There you go, Ed. So when that double-edged knife when the black hilt there strikes the body with sufficient force, it will leave an impression, a bruise. And now we know it's a hilted knife. The other one would leave a different kind of pattern impression or bruise.
You see the end of this right here?
Yep.
This is what Barbara's talking about. So when this impacts the skin, if this blade goes all the way in, you're going to get some of this information here, the geometry and the shapes that you see here.
Yep.
And it's going to be like a blunt force trauma injury to that area around the knife wound. And again,
Exactly.
going back to the hilt, now look at the geometry up here.
Mm.
Okay, it's flat now. There's no sharpness here. Okay, so you'll see certain geometry changes in the way the knife is made. And also this knife is double serrated on both sides.
Yeah, which leaves obviously a different edge of the cut. A knife, a steak knife or a serrated knife will leave a different impression.
So the same is here. I've seen many of these types of knives in crime scenes where this tip gets broken off and would later be found after doing a full body x-ray. The blade tip is inside the body and then recovered at the autopsy. And then you can see how that looks on the sharp edge side versus the almost like rectangular geometry here. And then the hilt is different up here. All right. Versus this type of kitchen knife, not serrated. Okay. Again, here's the dull side. And this one, Barbara was talking about taping the skin back together. You could see which side was not sharp versus what was sharp. So the rectangular side really doesn't have any cutting to it. You know, I can rub my hand up and down on this all day and I'm not going to get hurt. But if I try to do this on this side, I'm going to slice my fingers to shreds.
I got to ask Barbara or Ed, how difficult is it to, it's alleged or said through the autopsy that it was a Rambo style knife. At least that's what the news is running with. We all are hearing that. How
they're
difficult,
talking about a K-bar knife.
right?
A K-bar is a military style knife that has a very particular hilt, a very particular blade. It's got that slight upturn with the extra sharp point.
Yeah.
I
have a picture of it I could show. But what I was going to ask you guys is that how difficult is that to break that hitting a bone or hitting chest? Not difficult or difficult?
No, and Ed pointed out something really important there. The tip of a knife can break off quite easily when it hits bone. And Dr. Hirsch once pointed out to me in one of these very vicious stabbings that after the knife tip broke off, the guy kept stabbing and stabbing and stabbing. And we could tell that because the entry wounds now were very mushed and almost blunted as they broke through the skin. So the fact that they're pointing out a K-bar knife specifically, is it possible that the knife tip did break off in this person and they know what that knife tip looks like? Ron, do you have a picture of a K-bar?
For those of you who don't know, a K-bar is was a standard issue knife to the United States Marine Corps, and it has a sharp edge along the bottom and then a partially sharp edge in the front on the top, and then it has a blood well along the length of the blade. So Ron, if you could show it. I own 2 K-bars, but I have them locked up and I can't get to them right now.
Hold on, yeah. I'm picking it up right now. I didn't save it, but I have. There's tons of pictures available. Yeah.
So as Ed said, it's possible if on X-ray you're going to see that tip of the knife in the body, and if it's the K-bar or K-bar, is that how you say it? K-bar?
We say K-bar.
K-bar, yeah. If it's a K-bar knife, they're going to know that tip, and then they'll know exactly what kind of knife it is.
Right.
And that and the measurements.
When you Google this stuff, it comes up as U.S. Marine Corps K-bar knife. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna show a bunch of images, and Ed, you can just pick them out. Is it here, right here?
Yeah, take that one there. Yeah, it's fine. Now you have two different versions there. You have the traditional version, which is the top, and then you have the later model that has the serrations on the bottom of the blade. Now you can see, as I said earlier, in the front tip, you have actually there are two blades. There's the bottom blade, and then the top portion is also sharpened right up to that edge there. Okay, and it has its hilt and its safety right there at the back of the blade. And you can look at the geometry there, the size and shape. And then you can see at the base towards the hilt, it gets more rectangular and the blade stops about 1/4 of an inch away from the hilt. And it's fat, and this is heavy duty steel, folks. This is not some cheap stuff like the thin knives that I was showing you previously. So that's a heavy duty knife. And then Ron, if you could put your mouse over. Oh,
I got it back.
Okay. Yeah, right there where the mouse is. Leave it right there. Okay, so that's what's called a blood well. And without sounding too morbid, folks, that is to keep the blade from getting stuck in the body because a vacuum occurs or a seal occurs when it goes in. So that allows the blood to seep in there and allows you to not to get it stuck in there, so it pulls out. Matty Boy Sully is an ex-Marine. A Marine, and so he knows all about the K-bar. In fact, he lost one in Iraq, and I'm sorry, Matty, I couldn't find it for you.
Let me see if there's any other photographs that might depict this a little bit better. So here's a different style. We don't know exactly what style it is, but we're just giving you examples here, folks. So
yeah, but there are specific dimensions, though. There are specific shape and width and thickness. All of that is depending on the type of wounds that are present. So they're looking at a style of knife similar to this.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So, with, a good forensic pathologist will be able to reapproximate the wound, get an estimation of the length, the size, whether it was single-edged, double-edged, or, as Ed pointed out, a little of both, whether it was serrated or a straight knife or a kitchen knife. All they're telling us is that it was a large knife, and police are now suspecting that it was a K-bar. Of interest is that this is the first homicide there in 7 years. Can you imagine? 7 years.
7 years, no homicide, right. A small, sleepy college town. And 2015 was the last time they had a homicide.
Let me answer some of these super chats real quick, because Shannon sends in a $5 super chat. And she says, what a waste of beautiful lives. We all agree wholeheartedly with that statement. Ether Bunny sends in a $10 super chat, and she says, can you tell what hand a knife was held by? That was a good question, Ether Bunny. Thank you for that. Barbara, I'll let you take that.
Right-handed versus left-handed?
Yes. Oh, I just removed Barbara. Sorry about that.
Yeah. As Ed and I were discussing earlier before the show, if a right-handed person is facing someone and multiple stabs, the predominant number of stab wounds will be on the left side of the victim. Right-handed person, left-handed wounds. Left-handed person, there'll be more on the right side of the person. Not exclusively, but predominantly. So that is ostensibly one way to tell a person is right-handed or left-handed. My biggest takeaway from this particular case is that we have multiple stab wounds, reportedly mostly to the chest, and that at least one victim, possibly two, have defense wounds. Now, I'm going to presume that they were the people killed last, because against all odds, there were two other roommates in that house, 3-story house, who didn't hear a thing. These kids were killed in their sleep. But there has to be some noise to this. So at least one of them was awakened by, let's presume, perhaps the young couple, the man and the woman. One of them being killed, if they're in the same bed, one of them is being killed. The other one wakes up and, tries to fight off the attacker.
Really, really difficult case. And Ed and I showed some photographs. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's becoming a member here. Thank you and welcome Mama Bear for becoming a new channel member. And Mary Railbly, thank you so much. Sorry about that one. Much appreciated. Thank you for becoming a channel member. I want to show you this picture, Barbara, because when I first saw it, I was taken back by it. This is a photo of the foundation of the house and blood dripping out of it. Have you seen this in any of the crime scenes that you've been on, Barbara, where blood goes from the second and third floor down through the walls and down the foundation like that?
Absolutely not. No way. I can't even begin to understand that picture, how bad that is.
Is this your first time seeing this?
No, I've seen this before. I've seen this picture, but I've never in real life, I've never had a case where the blood actually seeps through the walls and down the foundation. Now, stab wounds, they bleed like crazy. And
it's alleged that these girls were there for over 8 hours before the phone call made. So these type wounds straight to the chest are known to bleed out like that, depending on what was hit artery wise or so forth, or how deep or how opened up. We don't know what exactly happened to them. The trauma that they incurred, we don't know, right?
When a stab wound to the heart or to the aorta or any of the major arteries results in huge ejection of blood, spurting blood. And they bled out. So,
and blood is a liquid like any other liquid. It's going to be affected by gravity, and it's going to seeks the low points, and it'll flow in the direction of gravity pushes it. And so, if that huge pool of blood was against a wall, that exterior wall there, and got underneath, say, the molding, the sheetrock, the sill plate, and so forth. Obviously, as I said earlier, from an architectural standpoint, the house wasn't sealed very properly. If that kind of blood can get out like that.
Yeah.
Pauline just pointed out in the chat here that how could that much blood, if they're on the mattresses, and mattresses certainly soak up blood. Yeah, Pauline Buckles. How could the mattress soak, wouldn't it soak it up? If the person was still on the mattress, but in the struggles, they may have been between the wall and the mattress, or, halfway off the bed. Right. Hard to say. I find it extraordinary that blood could travel that far. So, it's interesting.
We don't know if the bodies were still in the bed.
Right.
Yeah.
The victim could have crawled out of the bed still alive, and then, crawled up against the wall and died there, or the suspect could have brought a body there. And then the bleeding continued at that location. Yeah. And
the other thing to talk about, I think, here is that the coroner, Kathy Mabot, she talked about it being a crime of passion or something very personal. And why was she saying that? Because multiple stab wounds. Ed and I have seen many times overkill. You can kill a person with 1 or 2 stab wounds. If you keep stabbing, and especially if you keep stabbing hard, that's an anger, a hate.
A rage.
A rage, yeah, absolutely a rage. There's no reason to stab somebody multiple times unless you're really in a rage. And to have that such a rage that you could carry it forward for 4 victims.
Yes.
That's insane.
When they say multiple stab wounds, that's 2 or more, obviously, right?
Yeah.
They didn't specify 47 stab wounds. Like we heard with the young woman in, I think it was Kew Gardens, Queens recently. She was stabbed and then put in a hockey bag and then dragged out of her residence. They said she was stabbed over like 47 times or 42 times or something like that. You know,
now we have to also be mindful of the fact that sometimes people get the terminology wrong. Barbara described the stabbing, but there's also a slicing. And sometimes people don't understand the difference between a slice wound or an incised wound versus a stab wound. And there are differences. It's not a wound that is going into the internally. It's slicing, like you would slice a loaf of bread.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hey, I want to just remind everybody, this is Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, and we're talking with retired Chief of Staff from the New York City Medical Examiner's Office, Barbara Butcher. She has tons of experience in death investigations, and we are talking about the 4 homicides that occurred in Idaho, in Moscow. So again, I want to go to you, Barbara, quickly, because I know we got limited time with you. You're vacationing right now, and you're kind enough to come on with us, and I appreciate that. In this instance, who would be called in to help assist in this type of autopsy and examination? Odontologist? No. Forensic pathologist? Yes, we know, right? Could we talk a bit about that?
Yeah, here in this instance, this small town, they have a coroner who is a nurse and also a law school graduate. They don't do autopsies there. So the bodies were sent to Spokane, Washington, about 80 miles north of the town. The forensic pathologist there, Dr. Veena Singh, is excellent, well-trained, well-experienced. And I would presume in a case like this, where they have multiple police involvement, certainly you're not going to use the small town police exclusively to investigate a case of this magnitude. They have a lot of help. So I'm sure they brought in their crime scene guys and women. Their forensic anthropologists would come in to look at the knife. They can replicate knife cuts and measurements, and then bring to the police their thoughts on the size and shape of the weapon. Particularly when a knife or any sharp instrument hits bone, it leaves a perfect impression of its size, because bone doesn't have the give that flesh has. So I know in New York, our forensic anthropologists could tell you machete versus axe versus knife, and give you a really good picture of And Lorna is just saying here, a nurse performing an autopsy. The coroner, the person who's in charge of, that jurisdiction, is a nurse in this instance.
Right.
But the forensic pathologist in Spokane, Washington, they did the autopsies.
Right. She's just an elected official, but she just happens to be a nurse and a lawyer.
Yeah. Yep.
Police off the cuff, Barbara, whenever you're on with us, you got a lurker, and Bill Cannon sends in $20 super chat. Thank you, Police off the cuff. Bill Cannon sending in $20. We hope that you, Bill, consider taking a peek at Barbara's book. It's available on Amazon for pre-order.
Yes, Bill, as a matter of fact, you may even be mentioned in that book, if my memory serves me. I know Ed certainly is. So,
wow.
But Bill, I may have changed your name because,
There you go. Any other questions, Ed, that you might want to throw at Barbara here? Because we covered a lot. It's 34 minutes.
Again, the geometry of the blades. So the geometry of the blades, not so much this double-edged blade, but a blade like this, or a blade like this, where you have the blunt end and the sharp end. Now, so directionality can be determined because of the geometry of this blade. So if I'm being stabbed downward, okay, you have the blunt edge on top and the sharp edge on the bottom. Now reverse that if the blade is reversed. Okay, so we can gather that type of information upon autopsy and examination. the directionality of the knife, or sharp edge up, sharp edge down. Was it an upward swing? Was it a downward swing? All of that can be determined with a good forensic pathologist autopsy.
And I think, Ed, you could correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to hold this close because they don't want to expose their cards. And, if a knife broke off in one of the decedents and they have that, they're not going to want to just broadcast that all over hey, we got this. All of the investigatory evidence that was uncovered during autopsy, if it is important to try to narrow down who the perpetrator or perpetrators were, I think that they're not going to release that. And Barbara, this one goes to you from Bill. Barbara, can we tell if the same knife killed all four? Thank you for that question, Bill.
It might be if we have distinct markings like the hilt markings or the edge of the blade. It's absolutely possible. If all look similar. Some people in the chat have mentioned having more than one perpetrator. It's entirely possible, of course, but this kind of savagery, it's hard to picture two people being that enraged, but you never know. You never know. People are strange and evil is stranger.
Hey, Barbara, this is a good friend of ours, a channel member, Sherilyn Schaffner. She sends in a super chat and she says, after the heart stops, does a person continue to bleed? Thank you for that question.
Yes, but not bleed in the traditional sense. With stab wounds, you will get, immediate gushing of the blood until the heart stops. Once the heart stops, it's no longer bleeding in the sense of ejecting blood, but now it leaks.
Right.
So yes, the blood will continue to drain and drain from the body. And through the stab wounds,
right? And based on its position and how it's lying and so forth, and gravity, again, remember gravity. So the blood that's so you're laying face down and the stab wounds are in the front of the body, and so blood from the back will come forward and find these openings now and leave the body and follow gravity. Have you ever been to a house where the floor is not level?
Yeah.
You put a little ball down, you watch it roll across the floor. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the blood is going to do the same thing. It's going to follow the direction of gravity. Good stuff.
Emma Sanders, just 1 second, Ed. Emma sends in a question, and I think it might be to you, Ed, or maybe even Barbara can handle this. So what does a coroner actually do then?
A coroner is charged with determining the cause and manner of death by ordering an investigation police and ordering an autopsy by a forensic pathologist. In large cities and about 40% of the country, you have forensic pathologists who do that themselves. They work independently of the police, but in cooperation with the police.
Yeah, makes sense. Yep.
Coroners are often, former law enforcement officials, sheriffs, deputies, nurses. They're
elected officials.
Elected official.
Yeah.
In some counties, you only need a driver's license and a high school diploma to be a coroner.
Right, but as we saw in a high-profile case recently, a pathologist did an autopsy and gave a cause of death, but the coroner made the manner of death.
That's right. That's right.
Okay,
yeah.
So, right, and so it's an interesting system to say the least. I'll leave it at that. But what I was going to say before, now there's been a lot of questions, and then I thought I answered this in a previous episode about: is there a possibility of sequencing of the victims? And if the same knife was used to kill all four victims, there is this possibility. Okay, so as we talked about blood drippings, so if the first person killed with this knife, and I leave that person and I walk towards the second victim and drip blood from the first victim to the second victim, and I take samples of that blood, it should all come back to the first victim. Now I stab the second victim with the same knife. Okay. And now I have a combination of blood that potentially is on this knife. And I start to walk away from the second victim to get to the third victim. Now I leave blood drippings from a bloody knife leading up to the third victim. That blood should potentially contain, and at least in the beginning parts of it, combination of the two victims' bloods, victim one and victim two.
Right.
And if there's still blood left, because there seems to be a lot of blood here, if there's still a lot of blood left, and I stab the third victim, could potentially leave blood drops leaving the third victim heading to the fourth victim of three different victims. So these are all possibilities. In addition, there's also this other effect that occurs. I know what occurs with bullets, perforating bullets, is that when a bullet enters and then starts to go through the cavity of the body and through the various organs and then exits, that skin on the exit kind of acts like a squeegee on the surface of the bullet and takes away material from the bullet traversing through. And sometimes similar things can occur with the knife, depending on the style of the blade and so forth.
Yep.
So we have to be mindful of that. I mean, I had a famous case where, if you're familiar with Project Innocence, Peter Newfield, Barry Scheck, they had this program called Project Innocence, and they were using DNA to help wrongfully convicted people.
Tanklift.
Yeah, okay. But in one case that I was directly involved in was a murder of a wife by her husband by firearm, and there were 2 bullets fired, and the husband was claiming that the wife had committed suicide, and it was just after she had given birth. So he was saying it was a depression after giving birth, and she committed suicide. But there were 2 shots fired, and one of the cartridges stovepiped. Anyhow, one of the bullets went through the bed, went through the victim's head and out of the head and into the bed, and I recovered that. The other one hit the wall, and so Project Innocence said we got the wrong, we used the wrong bullet, and it was the bullet that was in the wall, and blah blah blah. So they wanted the bullets tested for DNA.
Wow.
Okay, and so yeah, they insisted. The district attorney tested the bullet they said was the bullet, not the bullet that I said was the bullet. That was the one that caused the death of the victim, and it came back negative for DNA. So then they said, "Do you want the other bullet tested?" No.
Unbelievable. We're getting towards the end, and you get involved in so many of these cases. It's fascinating that you have this experience, and it's always great for the audience to hear these types of things, because nobody in a million years would think that was what happened or what went on in some of these behind the scenes looks at these crime scenes. So it's unbelievable. I'm fascinated by it. Barbara, I want to get to the book now, because we're getting close. We're there. So this is it on my community page, and there's a link where you could just go right here in this blue link and click on it. And I added this pre-order now on Amazon. So Barbara, I hope you don't mind that I added that.
I love that. Thank you.
So could you tell some of the folks what this book is about, Barbara? I'm going to put it full screen, and I'm going to let you talk about it.
Sure. I wrote What the Dead Know over the past 2 years during COVID. And it's basically a memoir of my career as a medical legal death investigator in New York City. How I got there, how I got the job, and which is kind of a funny story. But anyway, it covers some of the oddest cases that I have seen, some of the most tragic and some of the most puzzling, and talks a lot about what we do at a scene, what a death investigator, what an autopsy, what a forensic pathologist teaches you. So you can learn a lot from the book, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's a little funny too, of course, because we have this weird sense of humor that sort of staves off the blues, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's not an easy profession to be in, and it takes a special person to do what you do and do it so well. So yeah, I encourage everybody to go over to my community tab. I'm going to repost this again so you guys can get it, but you can go over to DutyRon.com. There's a hyperlink on DutyRon.com that will take you straight there. But I'm just going to click the link and make sure it works. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to let me put this back on the screen. So I just clicked the link and it brings me right to Amazon, and you could pre-order the hardcover for $28.99. The Kindle version's $14.99, and the audiobook is free with your Audible trial. We don't want that. We want the hardcover. Just select this one right here.
The audiobook is not available yet. I have to see who's going to do it.
Are you not going to do it, Barbara? You're not going to record it yourself?
You know, they haven't really discussed it. I don't have a great voice, you know.
What are you talking about?
It's a little...
It's a perfect voice for a book like that.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't mind doing it. It'd be fun, but
right.
I don't know if I have the right kind of voice they're looking for. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the book.
It's your words. It should be your voice.
Look at some of these comments, Barbara. Wobbles66 says ordered. It's a pre.
Thank you, Wobbles.
Hey, by a show of hands in the chat, who is going to or has ordered pre-ordered this book? Just let us know. Go ahead. Let us know if you pre-ordered. I did. I actually have one coming out to my house.
I do too.
I can't tell you how I got that, but I'm hoping it's signed and with hearts and everything in there and all kinds of stuff. So, but I encourage everybody to go and do that. Let's see. Here's a whole bunch of number ones.
Great.
Tennessee Girl, Ashley, Sis Love, Diane pre-ordered, Lisa. Wow.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you like it. I wrote the book for you, for people who are interested in crime, interested in justice, and interested in the science and the forensics. So I hope you'll like it. Thank you.
Because without the science and the forensics, it's hard to get to justice.
That's right.
Again, folks like Barbara, they're speaking for the folks who can't speak for themselves. So it's great to have you here. Great to have you as a friend. Barbara, will you come back again after the holidays and talk more about this case?
I sure will. I sure will. Anytime, Ron. Great to see you guys. Great to see your subscribers. Everyone have a safe and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Barbara.
You too, Barbara.
All right, Ed, we're going to stay. We're going to let Barbara go. Thank you so much, Barbara. We love you.
Good night, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right, there she goes, Barbara Butcher. I think we covered a lot of stuff, Ed. She's awesome. Ed, the knife presentation that you showed and then the pictures that we showed, I think it gives the audience a great depiction of the potential, because we don't know exactly all the definitive details of all this stuff. We're just trying to put it in perspective and give you guys a little bit better overview, if you will, or a look at what some of the possibilities could be here, because they're not, as far as we know, they're not any closer than they were yesterday to today to coming up with answers. And we hope that the pieces of this puzzle fall into place. So let's look at the chat and engage a little bit with some of the folks in the chat. You seeing anything good?
What does door number 1 say behind Ed? Are you choosing door number 1, or is this like Monty Hall? Okay. It's the Chinese character for good luck. It's called Fuk. Not to be confused with another word. Okay.
Oh, yes. Fuk.
Fuk.
So yeah, I'm just was scanning the chat for any other questions in regards to the the autopsy or the forensics in this case. Everybody sleep with the door locked, says Molly Jones. Yeah. Yeah.
Ed, if I had a knife, if the knife breaks off, wouldn't that mean that that's the last victim? No, not necessarily. Like Barbara said, if you caught her, we've had cases where the knife blade broke off on the first victim, but the knife was continued to be used on subsequent victims because of now the morphology, the size and shape of the knife has been changed because the tip is broken. Okay. And so the initial impact of the broken edge of the knife is more of a blunt force trauma. And then until it gets to the section of the knife that still has the cutting edge on it and then creates the cut. So not necessarily.
Yeah. Here's a good one. And this question comes up a lot. And then we have a super chat to get to. Annabelle Roma says, Ed and DutyRon, do you think it could be a female? I'll let you go first, Ed.
Anything is possible. You know, it could be a female. Why not? I mean,
right.
You know, there have been female serial killers.
Right.
Okay. They're rare, but they're out there.
Yeah, and I think my answer to that was, if you're asking me what are my thoughts, I would say the probability is low that it's a female. But as Ed said,
I would too.
Anything is possible. Here's another one coming in. This is for you, Ed. Have you ever had to walk out of an autopsy due to emotions?
No. Not really. Not really. I mean, I've gotten emotional at crime scenes involving kids.
Right.
Yeah, involving children. Absolutely.
Yep.
Here's another thing I wanted to show you too, folks, too. Let's look at this. You see the end of this knife here, right here? You see what these are? You know, these are typically used to open the blade with your thumb and it locks in place, right?
Right.
Well, okay, so now if you start stabbing somebody with this, you're going to get this unique shape that's going to cause a blunt force trauma injury to the skin around the wound.
And or impressions, right?
Right, exactly. And and same thing with this, like this knife right here. Okay, you can see this little edge here, but let's look at it like this, and then you could see that edge right here. And when this knife blade comes in, and if it goes in deep enough, it's going to leave this impression here.
Right.
Okay.
The only problem is they don't have a weapon recovered, and you know, they can match it up to you know, this is again detective work. You can match it up to knives that are out there on the open market. We did hear that they went to the
hardware stores and
hardware stores, hunting store. Yeah, this is a hunting town. People out there, you know, are hunters, so that's not an uncommon thing to have a knife in the house. There's a question here asking us about the roommates. What's our thoughts on the roommates? They've been cleared according to the police department. We listened to the news conference. Ed and I listened and reviewed it. They cleared the roommates. They cleared the people who came to make the phone call with the roommate's phone. These stories or narratives will change as the story or as more interviews get completed. You know, there's many different versions of the time, you know, timeline and so forth. So yeah, I mean, that's just a matter of opinion, but we go by what the authorities say. We're not here to say, well, I think this and I think that. Earlier on, when there was no clarity, I did have some questions about the guy at the food truck. They cleared him, but I still, in my heart, don't feel right about the guy. But that doesn't make him a suspect. They said he's cleared. So,
you know, Maddie asked this question about whether or not it's a K-bar. You know, without looking at what they're seeing, I really can't say. But I'm thinking, you know, they say K-bar, they say Rambo type knife. I've heard in numerous questions. It's some type of a hunting knife or some type of military knife, something along those lines. And I just think, you know, I don't know what they're looking at. You know, I'd like to see the autopsy reports or maybe even examination of bedding that the knife may have went through and damaged. And you know, if you could see, you know, because the K-bar has a specific type of geometry, and you know, sharp edge on the top and the front portion, and then along the bottom edge, and then so forth and so on towards the hilt. But it would be interesting to see if that in fact is the case. But
the knife itself is it seems like it's a real strong metal, but at the tip, like you said, at the tip, you know, where we showed it was very sharp and very for penetration. That part could probably, break easily on a bone if it's hit really with force.
Yeah, any knife with the appropriate amount of force, striking bone
Yeah,
at the right angles and so forth could definitely break the tips off.
yeah, and
The tip is the weakest point of the knife.
right, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yep. It doesn't have as much thickness towards the base. Cindy sends in a $10 super chat. And she says, "How long can they stay alive after that type of knife wounds?" We are not 100% sure of the exact type of knife wounds. We know that it was to the chest, but there was no description. Right? They didn't go into.
We don't know if the heart was perforated. We don't know if any of the arteries were perforated, the knives were the arteries were severed. We don't know. So we don't know if this bleeding was spurting or if this was mostly internal. So it's hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean, a trained person with sharp-edged weapons, and military trained personnel know how to use these very effectively, and especially if somebody's sleeping. It wouldn't take multiple stab wounds for each victim for a trained person with a knife to kill them.
Right.
Okay. Again, given what we're being told, it seems like a lot of rage here. It seems like almost a psychotic episode was occurring here. And again, there's all kinds. I told you can look it up yourselves, folks. There's a lot of books on this forensic psychology of knife attacks, and the meanings behind them, the disorganized and organized, the frenzy killer, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, there's plenty of readings out there on this stuff. I want to get to these super chats real quick. I'm sorry, Ed. Purity sends in a $5 super chat and says, "Would law enforcement's end time of death 4 a.m. Would they determine that from an autopsy, and I believe it was, Ed, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was based on the last communication with cell phones. I have it written down here in my notes. She made these flurry of calls from 2:26 a.m. Kaylee starts to call a personal friend named Jack that we come to find out this was her ex-boyfriend. They were on again, off again. And then Kaylee calls him 6 times between 2:26 and 2:44 a.m. And then from 2:44 to 2:52, Maddie calls him 3 times. Then Kaylee calls Jack one final time at 2:52 a.m., hence the 3 to 4 a.m. time frame. Ed, correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. So now all of that is recorded. All of that is digitally tracked by the cellular carriers and the cell phone towers and all of that. So all of those phone calls can be corroborated that they were made, and from who to who. Next, who was actually on the phone? The only way that can be corroborated is with this guy.
Yeah.
Who did he answer the phone? And if he answered the phone, did he have these short little conversations with the 2 ladies before they were killed?
Yeah.
So that's the way that gets corroborated with Jack.
Absolutely. And Just Larry, who's a great friend from upstate New York, he sends in a super chat and says, "Hey, God bless these families this holiday season. So sad." Yeah, I believe just tonight is the memorial for Ethan Chapin. You saw an emotional plea from his mom, his brother, his sister. The father was there out in front of a location. It was just heartbreaking to see that. I watched that earlier today.
I just saw a good question here.
Grab it.
Let's see. Yeah, there it is. Usually there's a progression with this. Unless it's a crime of passion done in the heat of an argument and a dispute or a fight, where multiple people get stabbed, which doesn't appear to be the case here. These people were in their beds asleep. I would tend to think that this person, has a history from when they were a child of abusing animals, killing animals, working their way up to this.
And that brings us to the next controversy that's swirling and swelling within the true crime community and on on the internet. There was someone's dog that was skinned, and there was reports of other animals killed in that general vicinity. But the police made a statement. They went out, and they're actually going to do a news conference tomorrow at I have it written down here, tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that's 4 o'clock our time. Yeah, 4 o'clock our time, East Coast, 1 o'clock Pacific. And I think they're going to specifically talk about this because it's got so much conversation going on, and so many people are correlating that there's this person. And Ed,
they already said no.
Yeah, I know.
It's in all the papers. They gave a press release. It said it's not related. That's what they're saying.
But the reason I think everyone went into a frenzy about this is because exactly what you just said. A lot of these killers who are, graduate to killing humans start out with animals, and that just set bells off from everybody. And I don't know. Let me know in the chat if I'm off base on this, but I'm not saying that I think that there's this person who did these skinning these animals, the person's dog and so forth. I'm not saying that I think that that's our suspect, but that does fit the MO of some of these serial killers or killers that graduate to killing from animals to people. Mary sends in a $5 super chat and says, can they tell from the wound if it's a fixed blade or folding? We covered it, but Ed, I'll let you take it again.
Yeah, I mean, if they find any of this information on the hilt, or these types of marks here on a folding blade, and again on the hilt on like just like a Leatherman type knife, or in this case this is a Swiss tool, but the same thing though, because if I took this and I stabbed you and it came in, and you'll get this information as like a blunt force trauma impression injury. So, and then they can probably figure out whether it was a folding type knife, or in this case, if this one was used and they get this information here, plus this information here, the geometry of this, they would be able to determine, this is a fixed blade. And the same thing with this, with your kitchen type knives. Okay, if they get this information here and here, and then especially if you get this, you get this width, you're going to know it's not a folding knife.
Right. Thank you for that, Ed. Appreciate it. You always explain things in layman's terms, which is great. I'm looking to the Facebook page because I saw Larry say that there was some kind of update or blurb on there. I'm trying to see. This was 1 day ago. Let me look at the most current on the Moscow PD's Facebook page. Let's look at it together. So here's the City of Moscow Police Department. Let's see. Mentions. Press conference. Hold on. Yeah, I don't see it. If somebody could send it to me on Messenger, I'll take a look at it. But right now I'm just looking at their posts. And this is the latest one, 23 minutes ago. Moscow homicide update. The Moscow Police Department is providing the following information to update the public on the known facts surrounding the 4 murders that have occurred on November 13th in Moscow, Idaho. Oh, okay, let's see this. Update resource webpage. A new webpage on the City of Moscow's website has been set up as a consolidated location for information, resources related to the investigation. The new page can be found at, and there's a location. The investigators looked at extensively into information received about Kaylee Goncalves having a stalker. They have pursued hundreds of pieces of information in regards to Kaylee's alleged stalker related to this topic and have not been able to verify or identify a stalker. If you have information that helps detective, please contact them there. Weapon. There's been much conversation about the terminology used to describe the weapon. The type of weapon thought to be used in this attack in these attacks is believed to be a fixed blade knife. Detectives continue to look for the weapon. Let me go to this investigative webpage here. King Street homicides. And here's the summary. I wanted to see something about the animals that were skinned, if they had anything there. Is anybody saying anything about that in the chat, Ed?
No, I mean, there was some information in there, talking about the animal being skinned, but again, there was a release from the police that it was looked at. It has nothing to do with this.
What happened to the dog?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On the night of the incident, officers located a dog at the residence. Oh no, they're talking about her dog.
Yeah, they're talking about her dog, but the other dog being skinned, they came out and said.
Detectives were aware of a Later County Sheriff's Office incident of a report of a skinned dog and have determined it is unrelated to this incident. Contact the County Sheriff's Office for further details. Let's see about the rumors. What other rumors are there? The identity of the 911 caller has not been released. The investigators are aware of multiple phone calls from victims, Madison and Kaylee, to a male. Online reports of victims being tied and gagged are not accurate. Detectives seized the contents of 3 dumpsters on King Road to locate possible evidence. Local businesses were contacted to determine if fixed blade knives have been recently purchased. Currently, no suspects are in custody and no weapon has been located. All right, so that's up to date. I think we covered enough. Ed, you're tired. I got to get to bed because I got to get up at 6 a.m. So, you got anything else? Well, what's this up on the screen? Again, how did we leave with no blood evidence outside the home?
I don't know that that's the case. And it was talk in the press conference. The people were saying, "This, with this much blood, there's no way, this person didn't get any blood on them."
Yeah.
Well, that's not necessarily the case either. Because I teach a bloodstain pattern school several times a year for the New Jersey State Police, and I did it when I was with Barbara. We taught it several over the 6 years that I was with Barbara. We taught several every year, and we would get our students to create what's called radial cast-offs, radial spatters with the blunt force instruments. So the way we would do this is we would. I guess I should put out a what do they call those alerts? A
Bolo?
No. A trigger alert.
Okay.
Trigger alert. Okay, folks.
Trigger warning.
All right. This is trigger warning. How we do these bloodstains? We go to a butcher and we get pig's heads. Okay, and we slice the top of the head skin open, and then we place bloody sponges underneath the skin, in the incised areas of the skin. We separate the skin from the scalp with a scalpel, and then we create this cavity between the bone and the skin and insert the bloody sponge. And then we place this pig's head on some concrete blocks at a specific height, and then specific distances away from 2 walls. And then we suit our students up in tie-back suits and give them blunt force instruments like a baseball bat, a crowbar, whatever the case may be, and then send them into these corners to impact the pig's head and create blood spatter from them. And a lot of times, I have to tell you, they create these horrific bloodstain patterns on the walls, and they walk away with little to no blood on them.
Amazing. That's unbelievable. Sharing that. It's part of the learning process, and people, have to understand that that's how it's done. And that's, the body farm, they don't do stuff like that, I don't think, but they do take bodies and put them out in a natural environment or under different elements and see how the bodies decompose. And we had Dr. Murray Marks on the show with us to talk. We got to get him back, Ed. What's going on with Murray?
I don't know. I got to give him a call, see how he's doing.
Hopefully we didn't scare him off. Shannon Shannon sends in a $5 super chat, and she says, "I'm convinced they knew him." And I always refer to this case as the perp. I don't like to say him or her. I just call this a perp. It's a perpetrator. Thank you, Shannon, for the super love. Schmitty says, 1, might the killer have entered the home while they were out and waited? 2, would rage prevent him from planning to put on gloves typically used with that type of knife to prevent cutting himself? If it was a spur of the moment and a crime of just, happening just without any planning, maybe, I don't know. None of us have those answers, but thank you for sending in those. Hey, let's say hello to
I don't think this is a crime of opportunity. I think this was a targeted crime.
I do too.
Mhm.
Things like this just don't happen.
Hey, let me just break into this house, and I know nothing
Yeah.
about the occupants or who's in there, whether they're armed or unarmed.
Look,
And
let's call it a spade. Let's call a spade here. They were active on social media, as most 20-year-olds are in college. They were good-looking girls. They were active on their social media. They were the house, as the neighbors say, was a house that was respectful, but had people 3, 4, 5 nights a week partying in there. So it was a place of they were accessible to community folks. Everybody has to be looked at here. The people who live in the community, the people who they went to school with, the people who they engaged with on social media, the people that they met in these bars, the people that they met at the sorority play houses, and so forth. So I think this investigation is going to take a long time because there's a lot of people that you have to check off.
well, to be quite honest too, when you guys are on Facebook and all that stuff, putting your photos there. Okay, so if you're putting your photos there and your photos have metadata in them, and if you don't shut your GPS locator off, it's going to put it in the metadata of your photo.
Right.
So now, if you know how to do it, which is not that hard to do, you can open up the file for the photo, and then you can see exactly the GPS coordinates for where that photo came from.
Right.
Okay, and so now you know the location. You can put that GPS information into Google Earth, and boom, it's going to pop up, and you'll get an address. You Google the address. Guess what? You Google the address. You have open source information because there are all these photographs of that particular house because the house is for sale,
Yeah.
and so you can get a full. You get all your intel on that house from the real estate that put that information out there, those photos of the house. And so it's like giving you a free blueprint to the interior of that house.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's dangerous on many different levels. Mallory, we have been live, so we might not have read the newest update, but we are, I don't know if you just stumbled across here, but we're looking at the Moscow Police Department's Facebook page. So we just went over everything that is up to date from 33 minutes ago. If you have some breaking news that you want to tell us about, I'd be more than happy to hear it. But thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. And yeah, some people are saying they have their accounts on private. That's not a bad idea. When you do have your account public and everybody could see it, like Ed said, it's easy to get that metadata and find out where your location is. And there's many hackers and there's many people that are out there that have a lot more skills than the common folk. And they're able to find out where you are, and it's a dangerous proposition. I'm sitting here with my Glock 19 next to me, so if somebody wants to come here, I let them know that they're not going to, have a welcome wagon waiting for them. I want to just pull the chat because if you're not yet subscribed, I want to just say thank you to the new viewers that are watching. Consider subscribing. Hit that red subscribe button. Hit the notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed when we go live next or upload a video. And if you're new, I'd like to know if you're new, first time coming into this show and stumbling across Crime Time with DutyRon, let us know in the chat so we can say hello to you. And for all the returning viewers, thank you. Pocket Change XD, the wife of a minor, sends in $10 and says, how do you turn that off so it doesn't post that in the file on the photo? Ed, this is for you.
Well, you go into the photograph settings, and it's there. It's just a toggle switch. It's on or it's off. You shut it off.
That simple?
Yeah, it says GPS information, and you just shut it off.
Wow.
And sometimes you'll get these things. Do you want to share your GPS location? Do you want to share this, or you go to this website? This website wants permission to share. No, say no to all of that. You don't want to share that information. Okay.
Ed, look who's here. Our good friend from she used to be out in Sound Beach, out in Suffolk County. Mary. She's now
Mary
down
Mac.
in Florida. Yeah, McAleven. She has
That's
her
a
own
fine Scottish name.
Yeah, she has her own YouTube channel, but she ran away from New York because she wanted to be into warmer weather. So Mary, always good to see you. I'm telling you, I used to love having conversations with her on the comment section of back and forth, me and Mary. So I missed the engagement there, but thank you for coming around lately. And look who's here. Gary, boxing MMA all the way from Ireland. Oh, for fuck's sake.
What?
Happy Thanksgiving, Ron and Ed and everybody. Yes, happy Thanksgiving to all of our great friends. Wild Z Pony, she just
And I played the Wild Rover. No, I start singing Irish tunes. Okay.
Eddie T is in the chat. Jessica Essex, Wild Z Pony just purchased 2 new ponies. She sent me some pictures on email. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Secret Squirrel.
Yes, Secret Squirrel stuff. Let's wish everyone a happy, safe, and healthy Thanksgiving. We can't lose track of all the horrible things that are going on around us. There was just an arrest in Georgia with the Quentin Simon case, the 20-month-old remains of his found in the landfill at the waste management facility. We had that mass shooting in, I believe, Colorado in the just a couple of days ago, 5 innocent victims gunned down. So there's so much horror going on. These 4 young college students here. We want to just send each and every one of you strength, prayers, and positive vibes. I know Ed, again, he follows stuff like he's better than I am almost at following this stuff. Because when I call him and I'm like, Ed, did you hear about this? He goes, yeah, I just watched it. So he's always on it. So I appreciate
I get the alerts.
Yeah, that's good. It's very helpful. Thank you, Shannon, for the super love. Let's say thank you to the mods, Princess Mitch, Dawn Marie, Alicia B, so many folks. Ray Kelly is in the chat. Very interesting on the sex offenders. Yeah, they're looking at all the sex offenders in the area, and they have to interview them.
Is that Commissioner Ray Kelly? No, I'm just kidding.
It might be his cousin. We don't know. Diane B from across the street. She can throw a rock at my house. Don't you try it, Diane. I'll come out there and kick your butt. Hello, River Queen from Ireland, listening in from Dublin, Ireland. Wow. Awesome. Yes, we're aware. News conference tomorrow, Idaho PD at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I talked about that earlier. Here's some stuff for you, Ed. There you go.
The Poggies, the Irish songs. That's right. That's it. I actually, there's a young lady from the medical examiner's office that dated one of them. She originally came from Ireland. That's small world. Yes, I love all the Irish tunes. When I'm up in Boston, I go to the Irish pubs up there and get my fill of, Black Velvet Band, No Nay Never, the Wild Rover, all that good stuff.
Some of the people are behind and they're not on the live chat. So I think Tracy might be watching earlier on, like, back 20 minutes when Barbara was still here. So she's saying, Miss Barbara, you're amazing. So that's how I know that this particular person is watching us on delay. So, if you're not on live chat, then that's what's going to happen. You guys will get, you'll get some of that stuff from the back. We covered the autopsy and some of the potentials for the this knife attack that resulted in 4 murders. So I hope you guys enjoyed this informative, interactive live stream that Ed and I put on. It's over an hour and 20 minutes. We're going to wrap it up. Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving. As I always like to end these, God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially all the victims of these heinous crimes that are getting committed across the globe. But here in Idaho, we send the victims' families strength, prayers, and positive vibes, as always. Ed, what do you got for the team?
Remember, folks, stay safe, stay prepared, and watch your six.
Peace from New York. We'll talk to you soon. Happy Thanksgiving all. We love yous. Thank you.